Hello and welcome to Being Prodigy. Now put on your headphones and start learning. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description.
The Age of Industrialization in 1900, a popular music publisher E.T. Paul produced a music book that had a picture on the cover page announcing the dawn of the century. As you can see from the illustration, at the center of the picture is a goddess-like figure, the Angel of Progress, bearing the flag of the new century. She is gently perched on a wheel, the Age of Industrialization, with wings, symbolizing time. Her flight is taking her into the future. New words orient, the countries to the east of the Mediterranean, usually referring to Asia. The term arises out of a Western viewpoint that sees this region as pre-modern, traditional and mysterious. Floating about, behind her, are the signs of progress: railway, camera, machines, printing press and factory. This glorification of machines and technology is even more marked in a picture which appeared on the pages of a trade magazine over 100 years ago. It shows two magicians. The one at the top is Aladdin from the Orient, who built a beautiful palace with his magic lamp. The one at the bottom is the modern mechanic, who with his modern tools weaves a new magic, builds bridges, ships, towers and high-rise buildings. Aladdin is shown as representing the East and the past. The mechanic stands for the West and modernity. These images offer us a triumphant account of the modern world. Within this account, the modern world is associated with rapid technological change and innovations, machines and factories, railways and steamships. The history of industrialization thus becomes simply a story of development, and the modern age appears as a wonderful time of technological progress. These images and associations have now become part of popular imagination. Do you not see rapid industrialization as a time of progress and modernity? Do you not think that the spread of railways and factories, and construction of high-rise buildings and bridges is a sign of society's development?
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description. And please subscribe to show your support.
How have these images developed? And how do we relate to these ideas? Is industrialization always based on rapid technological development? Can we today continue to glorify continuous mechanization of all work? What has industrialization meant to people's lives? To answer such questions, we need to turn to the history of industrialization. In this chapter, we will look at this history by focusing first on Britain, the first industrial nation, and then India, where the pattern of industrial change was conditioned by colonial rule. Before the Industrial Revolution, all too often we associate industrialization with the growth of factory industry. When we talk of industrial production, we refer to factory production. When we talk of industrial workers, we mean factory workers. Histories of industrialization very often begin with the setting up of the first factories. There is a problem with such ideas. Even before factories began to dot the landscape in England and Europe, there was large-scale industrial production for an international market. This was not based on factories. Many historians now refer to this phase of industrialization as proto-industrialization. In the 17th and 18th centuries, merchants from the towns in Europe began moving to the countryside, supplying money to peasants and artisans, persuading them to produce for an international market. With the expansion of world trade and the acquisition of colonies in different parts of the world, the demand for goods began growing. But merchants could not expand production within towns. This was because here urban crafts and trade guilds were powerful. These were associations of producers that trained craftspeople, maintained control over production, regulated competition and prices, and restricted the entry of new people into the trade. Rulers granted different guilds the monopoly right to produce and trade in specific products. It was therefore difficult for new merchants to set up business in towns, so they turned to the countryside.
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description. And please subscribe to show your support.
In the countryside, poor peasants and artisans began working for merchants. As you have seen in the textbook last year, this was a time when open fields were disappearing and commons were being enclosed. Cottagers and poor peasants who had earlier depended on common lands for their survival, gathering their firewood, berries, vegetables, hay and straw, had to now look for alternative sources of income. Many had tiny plots of land which could not provide work for all members of the household. So when merchants came around and offered advances to produce goods for them, peasant households eagerly agreed. By working for the merchants, they could remain in the countryside and continue to cultivate their small plots. Income from proto-industrial production supplemented their shrinking income from cultivation. It also allowed them a fuller use of their family labor resources. Within the system, a close relationship developed between the town and the countryside. Merchants were based in towns, but the work was done mostly in the countryside. A merchant clothier in England purchased wool from a wool stapler and carried it to the spinners. The yarn, thread, that was spun was taken in subsequent stages of production to weavers, fullers, and then to dyers. The finishing was done in London before the export merchant sold a cloth in the international market. London in fact came to be known as a finishing center. This proto-industrial system was thus part of a network of commercial exchanges. It was controlled by merchants, and the goods were produced by a vast number of producers working within their family farms, not in factories. At each stage of production, 20 to 25 workers were employed by each merchant. This meant that each clothier was controlling hundreds of workers. The coming up of the factory. The earliest factories in England came up by the 1730s, but it was only in the late 18th century that the number of factories multiplied. The first symbol of the new era was cotton. Its production boomed in the late 19th century. In 1760, Britain was importing 2.5 million pounds of raw cotton to feed its cotton industry. By 1787, this import soared to 22 million pounds. This increase was linked to a number of changes within the process of production. Let us look briefly at some of these. A series of inventions in the 18th century increased the efficacy of each step of the production process: carding, twisting and spinning, and rolling. They enhanced the output per worker, enabling each worker to produce more, and they made possible the production of stronger threads and yarn. Then Richard Arkwright created the cotton mill. Till this time, as you have seen, cloth production was spread all over the countryside and carried out within village households. But now, the costly new machines could be purchased, set up and maintained in the mill. Within the mill, all the processes were brought together under one roof and management. This allowed a more careful supervision over the production process, a watch over quality, and the regulation of labor, all of which had been difficult to do when production was in the countryside.
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description. And please subscribe to show your support. Thank you and happy learning.